Hey there, my name's Aaron Taylor. I'm the general manager of Prosperity Media, which is a specialist SEO agency based in Sydney. And today I'm going to be talking to you about optimizing Shopify information architecture with Claude. So without any further ado, let's get straight into it. So why even consider IA optimization? Well, I'll tell you a little bit of a story. One of my clients came to us with an extremely bloated site. You can see this on the left here. They had over 100,000 URLs. Majority of those were non-indexable. You can see a lot of these red dots. And through our IA optimization process, which I'll go through in this video, we're able to consolidate that same website into only 10,000 URLs, which is only 10% of those URLs from the previous example. So why did this matter? So basically, we know Google allocates a certain amount of crawl budget to a website. We want to conserve that as much as possible. We don't want to dilute link equity, having scattered pages throughout the site, such as different URLs that are duplicated. We want to consolidate all of the link equity into a single URL, and also focus on index bloat and lost sales. So if we have sub-collections pages that aren't internally linked from the IA, we're actually leaving revenue on the table if they're not correctly ranking for us. So first, a little bit about me. I've led a lot of e-commerce SEO projects for some of the world's biggest brands, including many that I've never heard of. Some of the top ones include NIVEA, Ninja and Ego Pharmaceuticals. One of their top brands is QV Skincare. I've also spoken at many Australian and international SEO conferences, including Ahrefs Evolve and Sydney SEO Conference. I lead a team of 30 plus of Sydney's top SEO professionals. We specialize in all things technical SEO, content, and digital PR, as well as that AI search optimization as well. I'm a co-organizer of Sydney's SEO Collective, where we run a monthly meetup. We stay on top of the industry trends, we network with one another, and we organize a keynote speaker each month. So first, a little bit of an agenda. So optimizing Shopify architecture with Claude, we're going to start with best practices for Shopify IA. Then we're going to move into my particular Claude project setup. I establish markdown files for context. I'll talk about my MCP stack for SEO, and we'll get into some skills building as well. Then we'll go into how we use Claude to optimize your Shopify IA once we have the correct project setup. And then finally, we'll go into a mega menu optimization with Claude Design and Claude Code. So firstly, Shopify IA best practices. So firstly, we want to set up the correct collections and sub-collections internal linking structure. We want to make sure all of our sub-collections are internally linked from the primary collection. You can also link from the product pages itself and all the different sub-collections it applies to. But this will allow us to make sure that we have internal linking hierarchy within 3 hops of the main root domain. We want to apply breadcrumb logic. So make sure that we have a parent-child relationship from collection, sub-collection, product. You can also apply breadcrumbs to your blog post using a tagging system. And we're also going to work on URL canonicalisation, so we don't have duplicate product URLs and collections URLs. What this can do is, not consolidate link equity. It can actually create page duplication. And then the benefit of having a single product page URL is that the product can apply to multiple categories as well. We also want to go over pagination limits. So if you're using infinite scroll, I'd recommend using pagination. It's much more effective of internally linking to all your products. If you have a large product inventory, I would recommend setting that to 50 products per collection page and make a prioritization of the best sellers first. You can also utilize your blog and its subsections, create tagging structures efficiently, and internally link those from the mega menu under its blog subsection. You can also use roundup listicles of your own products to internally link to products deeper in the navigation to reduce that crawl depth. I've also been seeing web pixel URLs exploding across Shopify sites. And what you want to do to handle this is remove the internal links from those so they're not crawlable. If you can't do that, then I'll block those in the robots.txt with a disallow function for that string. Again, for review platforms, I've particularly seen this for Bazaar Voice as a review platform. You can create a review for every single review generated, an indexable page that's crawlable as an href tag. So basically what we're going to do here is block the robots.txt or just remove those crawlable links, because these pages actually can get indexed and rank and cannibalize your existing product page. So throughout this presentation, I'll be using Fenty Beauty Australia as an example, and we'll get straight into how I go about optimizing IA with Claude. So firstly, we're going to my particular Claude project setup. So in order to create markdown files, and these are short text files that create an amount of context for Claude. So every time you build something with Claude for a client project or your own brand, it has all of this context. You don't have to educate it every single time. So for the agency track, you can use a client discovery process. We do this for every engagement at Prosperity Media. This captures everything from their business goals, their SEO history, their tech stack, anything like that. We can create markdown files through transcripts of that video using like Gemini or a third-party app like Fireflies, or you can construct the core file based on manual creation, taking notes. You also want to feed this in to build those markdown files, as well as optimize a Claude MD file. I use a structure for why, how, what, which you can look into further to build an optimized Claude MD file for a project. Or in the AI-driven brands and owners track for Shopify, you can actually conduct a discovery session by getting Claude to interview you for all of these topics. You can optimize it for your top competitors, your ICPs, your brand voice, and your site architecture and tech stack and things like that. So when Claude has all of this context, it really makes a difference for its output. Here are some markdown file examples I created for Fenty Beauty throughout this store. We've got the mega menu brief, the product to Shopify mapping, as well as a competitor selection as well. So now for MCPs, this can layer on top of your markdown files to use the tools effectively with that context. So I've been using Firecrawl, Screaming Frog, Ahrefs, and SEO Gets. And how we've been using this is Firecrawl is essentially a web scraping tool. You can scrape Google results, competitor sites, and any public files on the web. Ahrefs, you can basically use the full functionality and create custom skills, so you don't have to repeat those tasks every time. SEO Gets allows you to pull from GSC and conduct the analysis that you would typically. And then Screaming Frog, again, you can just do all the features of Screaming Frog, but it can operate agentically, and you can have the ability to train it using custom trained logic and reasoning with markdown files. So now we need to go through with our MCPs and optimize our Claude skills. So the way that I build Claude skills, it may not be the way everyone does, is that I actually follow the steps that I want the Claude to take. I give it feedback throughout. I ask it to summarize the process, and then I ask it to create the skill. Once that's deployed, I then go into fine-tuning it over time. Once it makes errors, I ask it to update itself so that we continually use those processes over and over again. You can also feed it your SOPs if you have existing SOPs for your employees that you follow or your team. That will give additional context of how you want Claude to operate using that tool, whether it's Ahrefs, using a tool, whether it's Screaming Frog. So the core skills to optimize for your IA would be your keyword research and your GSE and scraping analysis. I've also laid in my own personal skill, which is competitor research as well. So here's an example of some of the skills I created for this workflow: your competitor menu IA analysis, which I spoke about just a second ago, as well as your product to keyword mapping strategy as well. So now we have all the Claude project context and setup. We can go ahead and start building and optimize Shopify IA with Claude. So this is how we're going to use all those tools. Basically, Firecrawl, we'll use it to crawl the products.json endpoint and get all of your Shopify inventory. We'll use Ahrefs to use those skills like keyword research to find new opportunities based on the context of the product inventory. We can also layer in Ahrefs, the context of your historical performance with GSC through SEO Gets, just make sure to segment it for your target market, whether that's US, UK, or Australia. And then Screaming Frog will use this to basically crawl and get your existing IA and internal linking structure so we have a good idea of what we're working with and what we need to improve. For this step as well, if you want to just get a list of your collections pages, you can ask Firecrawl to crawl your collections XML sitemap, and you can just grab all the collections pages from that. So from this, we'll have all the data sources to basically build out our IA and optimize our mega menu and start targeting new collections pages that currently don't exist on our site. So firstly, we're going to be mapping our Shopify inventory. So to do this, we need to establish context for Firecrawl to get the inventory file, which is the products.json file. We want to crawl our current collections from Screaming Frog and enable the structure to get the context for the collections pages. We're going to analyze the performance using SEO gets, collect the historical data for the collections pages, and then discover potential sub-collections. We might be ranking for things that we're currently not targeting, so that's a good layer and good insight to include. We need to find opportunities and conduct keyword research within Ahrefs, so we can find those new opportunities, and it has that context of the product pages, so we can actually start thinking ahead and finding new opportunities for us. Once we have all this context, we want to start creating those untapped opportunities, QA it at this stage, and then start mapping those relevant products to our new collections pages. And finally, we're going to start looking at competitor benchmarks by doing some competitor research and finding best practices for mega menu optimization. So here's what the products.json file looks for Shopify stores. They're very common across all Shopify stores unless they're being blocked. So here's Allbirds, Color Cosmetics, and Fenty Beauty, which we'll be using as our example. So using this endpoint, I was able to correct a product to collections mapping JSON file in Claude Code. So here's the collections XML sitemap. I mapped that to the JSON endpoint. We're able to create this mapping structure in the JSON file using Claude. So we also want to start using that competitor hijacking process that I spoke about. You can either scrape your competitors using Firecrawl, or you can just capture their nav bar manually with some screenshots and provide that to Claude or Claude Code as some additional context. So here's an example of competitor hijacking. We've got Fenty Beauty's mega menu here with some new arrival of products and a bestseller with very few collections. They actually have 69 collections with many of them orphaned, which we'll actually get through and internally link them from a mega menu later on. And we'll see NARS's set up here and also Charlotte Tilbury set up. You can see this has way more built out sub-collections and collections and way more opportunities to link to those collections pages within the IA heart, which is the main mega menu. So if you follow these processes, I assure you will save a lot of time. A project that might take 20 to 30 hours can be condensed to 5 to 10. And the majority of the time that you'll be spending is actually QAing Claude's output. If you're not getting the best output, I would first look at the markdown file level to see if it's got sufficient context. Then I'll look at your skills to see if they're actually fine-tuned enough to complete the steps. But then finally, even if those are perfect, we still need to apply our SEO expertise and our client or brand knowledge for the site. And then finally, now we've generated all those files, which we'll get into later, we're ready to brief and visualize our mega menu for our developer. So if you're using this, we'll go into Claude Code and Claude Design. So to follow this workflow, we need to create a design system in Claude Design. We need to capture the style of our existing mega menu, map the navigation using all those files we generated in the previous steps of Claude, using all those different MCPs and skills and markdown file context. And then we have to build and finesse it, generate a HTML output in Claude Design. And if you want to finesse it further, you can put it into Claude Code by importing the HTML file. So building your design system, basically I created Fenty Beauty Australia design system. I didn't have much access to any of their custom files. So I basically just used their Figma, their live website link and their existing mega menu screenshots. But if you have access to additional context and different files, you can use things like Figma design files, that your style and brand guidelines, or any other branded assets that you might have as well. So we're actually going to feed Claude Design all of the context that we had in our previous setup. So we've got our mega menu brief markdown, our actual CSV export of the mega menu mapping to the new collections pages to the products, and our JSON file mapping that we created earlier from the product.json file and the collections XML file. So remember at this stage to attach your own site's mega menu for the style component, which we talked about in setting up the Claude design system. So that should already be set up. But now when we do our input, we want to go into the mega menus of our competitors that has a context of what's best practice. So now we've followed all these steps. We're going to do the big reveal of what Fenty Beauty Australia and Rihanna's brand looks like before the optimization. So here, again, we can see it's quite thin. There's not much going on here. But from an SEO perspective, this is what we look like after. We've got, the free shipping, free standard above a certain dollar amount up the top. We've got different categories, face, cheek, and so forth. And then all of our sub collections linked between that. And from my example, this is not just better for SEO, but also it's better from a user perspective. They can find what they're looking for a lot more effectively. So in summary, let's go over what we went through. So first, you want to establish those Shopify IA fundamentals that we went through at the beginning. Then we want to build the context with our MCP, our markdown files, create the skills and the MCPs that we need for that Claude project setup that builds upon that context established at the beginning. We want to do a competitor research to gather what's best practice in our industry, and then design the UI, map the new mega menu in Claude Code and Claude Design using a custom design system so we can brief it to our developer to create that with a much more structured, much more visual brief. So if you want to get in touch, here's a QR code to my LinkedIn. I post regularly about SEO, AI search, and agency operations. Make sure to add me and message me if you have any Shopify Claude skills that you want to conduct. If you want to get in touch about anything and how I'm using Claude, here's a QR code there, as well as a link to a blog post I wrote on the subject. And here's basically the summary. You want your site to look more like this one instead of this one. So hopefully if you follow this process that I've laid out, you'll have a lot more of a cleaner site structure and a much more optimized information architecture. So thank you for your time. I hope I provided some value. Make sure to reach out, and thank you.